Shalom, my friends, and shalom, my enemies, and shalom, everybody in between. This is your old pal, Rabbi Sol Solomon, founder and spiritual leader of Temple Sons of Bitches in Great Neck, New York. And how thrilled and delighted I am to have this smiling person. Hold on, I gotta get all the phlegm out. Hold on. Much better. This smiling person, JOHN SUZUKI, into the neighborhood. Now, he's an entrepreneur. He's also been a guy in tech for many, many years, but he's using his third life, his quote-unquote retirement years, to spread the word of good things, to be a sort of motivational, to have better things going on, and to tell what he feels is an important story, and not told enough story of World War II, particularly of Japanese Americans who were interned unfairly in this country, treated like, scary foreigners, if you will. And, how would you feel if your country did that to you? And yet some of these people said, you know what, it's a terrible war. The Axis is even worse than what we're being treated like here. Let me go fight for the Allies. So he's written a book about someone and several people who did exactly that. The book is called, get ready to hold that thing up, American Grit. Show that thing, there it is. American Grit, written by JOHN SUZUKI. Shalom and welcome to the neighborhood, John.
Shalom, Rabbi. How are you?
I got the phlegm. I got a shoulder issue.
We all have problems. We all have problems.
How's your prostate?
My prostate is growing. It's a wonderful thing.
Growing with what?
Yeah, that's one of those things that's one of those growth things that you really don't want, but that's okay.
Can you sleep through the night, or do you have to piss a couple of times? Every 2
hours. TMI, Rabbi, TMI.
Anywho, so here's the thing. Welcome, of course, to.
Thank you.
So you call yourself, before we get to the book, what is a technological evangelist?
Yeah. Okay. So I was in high. Yeah, so I was in high tech for about 40 years. Worked for companies like IBM and Sun Microsystems, was in travel with Expedia. And my job, most of my career was in sales, but the last 5 or 6 years, I was Expedia's global evangelist and ombudsman. And what an evangelist is someone who goes out there and talks to their partners and their customers about technology, what's going on, what's happening, why they should care, what the trends are, and of course in technology the trends are amazing. So that was the evangelist part of me, and the ombudsman part of me was to get out there and have big ears and to listen to my customers, listen to our partners, get the information in terms of how we could help them, and take it back to the leadership of the company, and they did something about it. So it was a lot of fun. I traveled all over the world, and it was great.
So I'm curious about an actual example, because we all know all these different travel websites. What was your way of making Expedia stand out from, Travelocity, from Hotels.com, from this, from that?
Yeah. Okay. Well, one of the big things that I did was in the vacation rental industry. Now everybody now knows what vacation rentals are, but for a long, long time nobody knew what a vacation rental was, because now you have Airbnb, now you have Vrbo, you have all those different kinds of things. And so bringing vacation rentals into the mainstream of travel, into e-commerce, was something that is, imagine the guys, the Yellow Pages guys one day saying, hey, listen, well, let's stop the Yellow Pages and let's become a full e-commerce marketplace. It's an entirely different business model. And of course, bringing our business partners along was in some ways a really, really painful process that required a lot of selling, a lot of convincing, a lot of educating. And so my role was to get out there and to inspire them, yay, the evangelist part of it, get them excited, help them understand why we were doing what we were doing. It was very, very challenging, but amazingly rewarding. And the really great news was that Expedia let me do my job. And they actually listened to what I wanted to, what I felt we needed to do, and it was great.
I have to say that Expedia inspired me to do the website usemysukkah.com. TotalTheater.com. So on Sukkot, the Jewish holiday, I put that up there, and I have people vying to pay to stay in the sukkah for a couple of hours.
Sure.
Night sort of thing. I must have made like $30-40. It was wonderful.
That's awesome. Well, you know what? Better to make $30-40 than to owe $30-40, right?
Well, yeah, I do owe.
Yeah, and Expedia's product is Verbo, and I spent a lot of time with Verbo. So yeah, it's very, very good.
So all right, So how did you're not so much a tech guy as someone who explains tech to people who. So you weren't like an engineer or making all those things. You were
No. My job was to understand how tech applied to our business partners and our customers. And we built technology that our business partners used. And so it was educating them on what all that meant and why they should care and why they should spend the time to implement the stuff we were building.
So how did your background lead you to that? What did you study in college? Where did you come from? Your early years, if you will.
Yeah, in my early years, so I graduated from high school in 1979. So I've been around for a long time. And my first computer class was using punch cards.
Wow.
Yeah, the reason why I got into technology was because of the K key. And what I mean by that was that we got a brand new computer in the college that I was in, and it had these things called monitors, and right?
Yeah.
And the amazing thing was that it had a keyboard, and when I punched the K key, the K showed up on the screen, and I was just amazed. And I said, "That's the future of the world, right there."
Yeah.
Yeah.
See,
I mean, fax machines weren't even out. Huh?
I have a big problem with punch cards because a lot of times I will hand people my card and then they'll punch me.
Yeah. Not quite those kinds of punch cards, but yeah. And I my first job was with IBM, and I've been in high tech ever since. And so, yeah, my high tech sales. And so I learned all about communications. I learned about understanding customer needs and how we could help people, and that naturally kind of flowed into the role of evangelist and ombudsman. We lived happily ever after.
Now you're retired. You're comfortably.
I am.
I mean, you have a family, wife, and kids, and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, grandkids too. Yeah.
This is so it's a wonderful. So you chose in your post-work tech ombudsman years to write a book.
Yeah, here's the thing, is that I believe that we all have three careers, Rabbi. I think our first career is to learn and go to school. The second is to earn a living for ourselves and our family. And the third is to return and give back. And so my whole thing was, my whole life now is returning. And I think we all have a common purpose, share a common purpose to make the world better than the day we landed on it.
See, the problem is I have, not to interrupt, but I totally anticipate three careers in my life. The three: prostitute, rabbi, back to prostitute.
Yeah. What comes around goes around. Absolutely.
Around, up, and under, and don't want to know. But so you've done. So now you're in the giving back phase.
I am.
Are you a philanthropist? Are you a motivational speaker? What do you do?
Yeah. So I wrote this book as part of I call it a passion and it was something that I'm supposed to do. It was a series of miracles, and I'll call it divine intervention that got me to writing that book. And from that book, I just and the book is all about tragedy. It's a love story, really, and it's about the Japanese Americans during World War II, who were thrown into concentration camps right here in the United States.
Could you maybe not? I know the word is the correct term, but
yes,
as a Jew and as someone who knows World War II, that is a loaded term. We like to
understand
internment camps, what they were, and I know there's a difference between a concentration camp and a death camp. But if you're talking about concentration camps, I want you talking about Auschwitz or Belsen.
Okay, that's totally fair. Yeah. That is totally fair. And because I'm a man who calls it like I see it. And I don't call the concentration camps of Europe concentration camps. I call them more death camps. I call them, I mean, they, by definition, my definitions are correct. And but I understand,
I mean, I would call
the
Auschwitz
vernac-
a Jew destroying camp, but that's Harvard. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
yeah.
But
Yeah, exactly. But right, that's more accurate
in a way,
than to
yeah.
me than the term concentration camp. I mean, we're using these euphemisms, and so I won't use that term anymore. So we had these camps in the United States. We'll call them internment camps because that's the popular vernacular or the euphemism for that. And they were thrown 120,000 people of Japanese ancestry, including 50,000 babies and children, were rounded up, were evicted from their homes on the West Coast. They were evacuated and they were thrown into these camps in the middle of nowhere where people do not belong. And they were thrown into those camps simply because they looked like the enemy. They looked like the enemy. And so my book is about that, but what it's more about is not only the tragedy, not only the horror, not only of civil rights being taken away, but it's about men who volunteered out of those internment camps to fight and die for the United States Army, who put them and their families in those camps to begin with, and they went off to fight for America while their families stayed in those camps, and they went on to become some of the most decorated war heroes in the history of the United States.
Now they didn't put them in the eastern. They had them fighting Germans. I imagine they would not have put them in the Japanese area.
Right, right. So that's really interesting, Rabbi, because they did send most of them to the European theater to fight against the Germans, but they sent 6,000 of them to fight Japan. These are Japanese Americans fighting Japan, and they served in what was called the Military Intelligence Service. And this was a top secret group of people that was classified until 30 years after the war. And they served as interpreters, they served as interrogators, negotiators, and these guys were embedded with the American Army. They were part of the American Army, and the amazing thing was that at that time, Japan viewed everybody. The emperor viewed anybody who was of Japanese heritage to be a citizen of Japan. So as these guys were fighting Japan, if they were captured, they were killed as traitors. And
Yeah.
so
Well,
right.
so it's not so crazy though that the United States viewed people of Japanese descent as potential traitors because Japan's own country saw these people as Japanese and as part of Japan. So it's a little ironic there.
It is. But the concern that Japan viewed these people as their citizens had nothing to do with the decisions to throw these people into these internment camps. And so yeah, some of them did fight in the Pacific Theater. And what was really interesting about that is that when the war was over, they were right there to help rebuild Japan, and to help with the communications. And they were there when Russia wanted to do to Japan what they did to Germany. And so they were there to rebuild the alliance and what became a military and political alliance between the United States. Amazing stories, just amazing stories.
My thing is that this became a calling for you to write this book, but why? This is not about your family. This is not about people you know, or you have to do a lot of research and investigative work. So how did this story become your story? I can understand if this is about your dad,
Yeah,
or,
yeah,
or grandpa, or
yeah.
something, but why you and why this?
Yeah, so I'm of Japanese ancestry. My dad served in Japan. My dad served as one of those guys.
Right, on our side.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And so I am, yes, our side.
Yeah.
Let me be clear, our side.
I include you in our side.
Absolutely.
you know.
And you know what's really interesting about that, just side note, is that sometimes when I go to Japan, we'll have conversations and I'll talk with folks in Japan, Japanese folks, and they'll ask me, they'll say, you know, if the United States and Japan were to go to war, whose side would you be on? I said, you know what? You and I would be fighting each other. There's just no question. And you know, they respect that. They totally respect that. And so my family has a little bit of background. But one of the things, so I know about, I'm a history buff a little bit on World War II. But one day, you know, what happened was I was just minding my own business and I came across this flyer. And this flyer said, pilgrimage to Minidoka. I didn't know what a pilgrimage was. I didn't know what a Minidoka was, so I just ignored it. And for the next 8 weeks, I saw this crazy flyer all over the place. And I thought, this is weird. And I'm like, okay. So the day before this pilgrimage was supposed to happen and these people were going to get on a 12-hour bus ride, I find this flyer on my windshield. And I said, okay, listen, I'll call. And so I called him up and I said, hey, listen, I know it's tomorrow, but you know, do you have a seat on the bus? And they said, this must be your lucky day. We just had one cancellation and it's yours. And so the next day, and this is a time when I'm working 60 hours a week and I'm traveling 3 weeks, 3 weeks every month. I don't have time to spend 3 days on a bus going to someplace I don't know. Well, it turns out that this place was called Minidoka, and it was a former internment camp in Idaho. And so I didn't know why I was going because my family was not interned there. They were, and so had no idea. Everybody asked me, why are you going there? And I said, you know what? I don't know why I'm going, but I have a feeling I will know on the bus ride home. And so the first day, it was amazing, went through, and at this time, this was 17 years ago, and there were people on the bus who were actually there during World War II, and it was unbelievable. And they shared their stories and just tears and anger and all the emotions you can imagine. On the third day, I woke up on the third day going, still haven't figured it out. They had a remembrance ceremony that morning, and we stood in front of a billboard. And this billboard was called an honor roll. And it listed the names of over 1,000 men who volunteered out of that camp to fight and die for the United States Army during World War II. And they went on to become part of a segregated Japanese-American war unit called the 442nd Regimental Combat Team. And they went on to become the most decorated war unit in the history of the United States for its size and duration. And I looked at that. I knew about the 442nd. I knew about the camps. I did not know about the men who volunteered out of those camps to fight and die for the United States Army. And I just went, oh my, and that was the moment. That was the moment. And so I decided at that time that that the world needed to know about this. This was a story the world needed to know about. And I set off to write a screenplay. And someday I hope it will be picked up as a movie, but I'm not there yet. I wrote this book. But just an amazing, amazing story. And so, you know, the fact of the matter is fewer and fewer people even know that these camps existed that this part of our history happened. And so part of my passion is to educate folks that this stuff happened so it never happens again in this country. And the problem is that it will. It will.
Well, it almost did, in a way, it almost did after 9/11.
Exactly.
Everybody assumed if you had an Arab name, if you worshipped at a mosque, etc., and so forth, it wasn't fair, but again, it was kind of understandable. You know, racial profiling in an airport, we get because ... So, you know.
That's right. And you know, there was this misdirected energy out there that said, hey, you know, if they're Muslim, they must be terrorists. We need to round them up.
Well, that's
interesting.
Come on, that's kind of true. But okay, no, I'm kidding.
Okay, so there you go. And so, but there's an interesting story to that, is that George Bush, who was president at the time, you know, the 9/11 happened.
Yeah.
Huh?
W.
Yeah, George W. Bush. Yeah, Bush Jr. Yeah, he was president at the time. And when he brought his advisors together, there was a guy named Norman Mineta, who was his transportation secretary. Norman Mineta spent his childhood in one of these camps.
Hmm.
And and when Bush Jr. said, "Listen, what are we going to do?" He also said, "Whatever you come up with, do not come up with these internment camps, because we are not going to do to anybody what we did to that guy right there." And so that was part of the conversation even back then.
Do remind me, and maybe I missed this, but again, we said that your family wasn't thinking but like your parents and grandparents, where were they in World War II? I know.
So my mom was actually in Japan. She was in Japan. And so
Visiting,
she
or
was
she
on
was
the other
living?
side. Huh?
Visiting or living? She was.
No, living,
She was still. She
living.
was Japanese. She was
Yeah,
the
she's just,
enemy. So what? Yeah,
yeah,
but at
yeah.
least she
And
wasn't in the army because she's a woman. So
yeah, yeah. No, she was on the receiving end of our fire bombs and our bullets. And which is an entirely different entirely
oh,
different experience.
yeah.
Yeah. And she just a couple of quick stories. She remembers the face of the fighter pilots who strafed her. They were
Wait. How
so,
could she see them?
because they were that close.
Not
I
good.
mean,
Bad
these
aim.
planes were coming towards her. These planes were coming down with machine guns, killing everybody. I mean, war's hell. I don't blame the United States. I'm not gonna go there. But she remembers seeing this plane, this fighter plane coming towards her, strafing, bullets coming out of its wings, and got so close to her that she saw the pilot's face. And stuff like that. Obviously, she didn't die. But just one other quick story. They
Please.
didn't have food. They didn't have food. Nobody had food. Obviously, I mean, it was war. It was the whole place was being destroyed. And she found a peanut. She found a peanut, and she decided, I'm going to plant this peanut. I'm going to love this peanut. I'm going to take care of this peanut, so this peanut makes more peanuts for my five brothers and sisters. And she was the oldest one, oldest sibling. And so she took care of this peanut. She stuck it in the ground. She took care of it, made it wonderful. Weeks went by. The damn thing didn't grow any peanuts. And she got so frustrated that she grabbed the peanut, she ripped it out of the ground, and there were peanuts.
Oh, because they grow that way.
They grow in the
Right. Yeah.
ground. And she
Not only
said,
were there peanuts, there were Archie comics as well. So it was.
"Yeah, that's right."
No.
But she said that to her dying day, it
She
was the
told
best
me
meal
no.
she ever had.
Yeah.
It was the best meal she ever had in her life. Yeah. So war's hell. But my mom was there, and my dad met my mom when he was in the army helping with the reconstruction.
Ah,
And they got married in Japan and came back to the United States. Yeah.
this is that. So in some ways, there's a happy ending to the 40 million people.
Well, if people think I'm a happy ending, I appreciate that. So.
Well, I love that you have on your website your wife of almost 40 years, Mazel, your wife, Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov. I know you have children, grandchildren. She has compared you and your energy. And I mean, look at you. You're what, in your 60s at this point?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
she has, you have this on your site, so I can say this. She compares you to, quote, a dog chasing squirrels.
Yeah,
How you go
squirrel,
about what you're.
squirrel, squirrel. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
how long did it take you to to gather the information and to write the book?
Yeah, it took me 15 years. 15 years. Yeah. And the amazing thing was I traveled the world. I went to the battlefields in Italy and in France. And I interviewed men from the 442nd, Japanese American men, Medal of Honor recipients, just incredible, incredible people. And going to the battlefields was one of the most humbling moments of my life. It just, those guys are there. There was a moment in one of the battlefields where I jumped into a former German foxhole, and I'm looking around, and their presence was so strong. I couldn't stand up. My legs just buckled. I broke down in tears. The feelings are coming back right now. And the guys were there. The guys were helping me on my journey. And it was the honor of my life. The honor of my life.
And I'm actually, in a way, I'm kind of glad you're saying you started at 15 years because so many of those people were alive at least.
Exactly.
They're
Exactly.
not, now their stories, you have to tell their stories because they're not there anymore.
Exactly. And I just interviewed back just before Christmas a man who's 101 years old, and he actually fought with the character that I write about. And he fought
So you
in
made side by side with he
yeah,
and this
yeah,
character both on the
yeah,
same side fighting. Yeah.
yeah, which is amazing, and of course, an honor of itself to be able to meet somebody like that.
Now, we do want to tell people how they can read your book and get your book, which is called American Grit. Hold the thing up again. American Grit, which is
It's
available how?
it's on Amazon. That's the easiest way. But it's called American Grit, and if you just write American Grit Suzuki, you'll go right to it. Yeah, and so and so far I've gotten all my reviews have been 5 stars except one 4-star review.
I can thank
Yeah.
you.
Who are you? Who's that guy?
It's something there's going to be a plane strafing this guy's house.
Yeah, that's right.
Like,
Just let me at him.
Cough up another star, you asshole. But get it where all the books. And by the way, I also want to push, if you will, your website, johnsuzuki.com, so you can find out more about him and his pictures and his nice.
Thank
John
you.
Suzuki, Suzuki, Suzuki.
Yep.
You're not related to the piano guy, right?
No, I'm not. So Suzuki is the Smith of Japanese names. There's more of us in Japan running around.
Right?
It's just and my first name is John. My middle name is James. So it's basically John James Smith. So I tell people I've got the world's greatest cheap sale name. And my dad wanted me to bleed red, white, and blue, being from the Army and all the sensitivities towards Japanese back then. And so, yeah, John James Smith.
There you are, John James. Let me ask you though, you've written the book, and now, of course, you're in this thing for several months now, promoting, just wanting to get the story out there, people reading it, people knowing what happened, the story of this character. So, what is your fourth act?
So the interesting thing about my book, I started off with my book wanting to inform the world, educate the world. Just two things: educate the world and make sure this stuff doesn't happen again, right? And as I was going through this journey, I realized that the greatest message that came out of the book was not about the camps. It was about these guys who refused to blame anybody for their circumstances. They refused to be victims. And they refused to succumb to paralyzing themselves and feeling sorry for themselves. And they empowered themselves to figure out how the heck in those days prove their loyalty and get the heck out of those camps and get their families out of those camps. And they decided to fight discrimination. They decided to fight for the United States, fight against America's enemies. And they came out and they won. And so that led me to my fourth act of starting a podcast.
Oh, yeah.
And so, yeah, I started a podcast called Finding Better. And this podcast is all about helping people find better in their lives. And it's about sharing experiences, sharing wisdom. It's not about opinions. I had a friend tell me, John, I could care less about your opinion, but I'll listen to your experiences all day long. And that was what guided me to with regards to this podcast. And we talk, it's real life experiences, people who have been there and done that, so that folks listening can take those lessons and take some of that wisdom and decide to apply some of that to their own lives. And it's wonderful. It's wonderful because So many people want to give. So many people want to share their stories so that people learn from them.
I want to take. So if you could connect me with these people who are giving, I will be a very glad taker. So, but if people want to take your podcast, is it at johnsuzuki.com or you have to go to another place? Or
Yeah, it's called Finding Better. They can go to findingbetter.com. And
findingbetter.com for the
yeah,
podcast, which you
yeah,
host, you create.
yes, I do.
It's true stories of people who turn their lives around and who did great things. And
You know, I just did my last episode was a first of its kind that I did, and it's called Finding Better with God. I did another one called Finding
wait,
Better
you
with Art.
interview God? I've been
Yeah, no, I
this is
interviewed,
the first
I
show.
interviewed, yeah,
I've been trying
yeah.
to get him on in the neighborhood.
I'll
And
get you connected. I'll get you connected.
would you please keep sending angels thinking they hang up on me? I don't like it. But
Yeah, but you know, finding better with gratitude, finding better with artificial intelligence, finding the greatest love of all, finding better money. I talk about everything. I talk about finding better road rage, and you know, and I bring guests on, and we talk about our own life's experiences that maybe folks can learn from, and not make the same mistakes or be able to shortcut a little bit of their lives by emulating people who've been there and done that.
now, one of the things we're going to close with John Suzuki here on Dave's Come By. So I'm going to first plug, before we have our last question for you, going to plug one more time American Grit, which you can buy on Amazon and all these places, plus find out more at johnsuzuki.com and check out his podcast at findingbetter.com, where you can listen to that. But one of the other ways that you've been spending it is that you have nice little hobbies. So you enjoy fishing and paragliding.
Yeah, yeah,
Have you not heard?
yeah,
Is that the thing where you Paris? No, it's what the hell is you're not afraid to do this?
yeah. It's paragliding where you're actually a pilot. You're piloting an aircraft, and the aircraft is a wing, and you jump off cliffs and you go flying. Yeah, it's good.
Oh, sounds wonderful. Are you strafing people on the way down?
Oh yeah. That's the strafing part. Yeah, exactly.
Why
It's
would
a
you
great.
try? As a father and as a husband and as a grandfather, why would you do something that is potentially risky like that?
Because I love it. It's wonderful. There's no such there is no other feeling than flying, and you're flying with the birds. Yeah, full disclosure, I'm a retired paragliding pilot. My last trip was to Ecuador, and I landed in three trees. I landed in the Pacific Ocean. I hit a building, and I almost ran into a semi truck. And so all on one trip.
Oh, this
You're not supposed to run into anything. I ran into a whole bunch of things. And it was when I
I
came home
thought
from
you were
that trip.
Japanese. It turns out you're at least partially Polish. Because at a certain point, I was like, I almost hit a semi truck. Let me go back out there tomorrow and do better. I'm going to find better with
That's exactly right.
I'm going to go halfway into the ocean and have
Yeah.
to get rescued. This is
Kept trying for better, kept trying for better. And it turned out in the final analysis, my better was just to hang up my glider and be done with it.
Well, I couldn't have imagined a better conversation with a guest than we have had with John Suzuki here in the neighborhood. Get his book, American Grit. Listen to his podcast, Finding Better, and wish him much, much good luck in getting the story out there and having a fourth and a fifth and an 18th life. You should live to see great grandchildren too, because you're absolutely wonderful. Happy Purim to you. Happy almost Easter, whatever it is that you celebrate. And
You
thank you
too.
for being with us. Shalom to you.
Shalom.